Chapter 20. With a low, horrified groan, Bobby lurched backward. He felt his stomach knot and then toss, and before he could hold back or move away, he began vomiting up his breakfast. He heard startled shrieks, then cries of concern. When he had finished, he stood leaning with both hands pressed against the next locker, struggling to catch his breath. "Oh, wow, I see you had eggs for breakfast." Bobby turned to see Arnie shaking his head. "Hey, no jokes, Arnie," Bobby choked out. He pointed to his open locker. "Don't look in there," he warned. "You'll lose your breakfast, too." "Huh?" Of course, Arnie couldn't resist. He stepped in front of Bobby's locker. What a mess! When he saw the monkey head, Arnie uttered a startled cry. His pale face went even paler. Then he reached down and pulled the monkey head off the locker floor. He held it in the palm of his hand and raised it to Bobby. "Put it down, man!" Bobby screamed. "Are you crazy?" "But it isn't real, Bobby!" Arnie cried. "Look, it's plastic." "Huh?" Bobby gaped at the monkey's twisted mouth, its black, shiny eyes. "It's not one of mine?" "No, man," Arnie replied, holding it closer to Bobby. "It's plastic. It's just a toy." Bobby stared at the plastic monkey head in Arnie's hand, feeling a surge of anger rise up from his chest and spread over his entire body. Without warning, he swung his fist hard against the monkey head, sending it flying down the hall. Two girls leapt out of the way, shrieking in surprise, as the head bounced over the floor. "Who is doing this to me?" Bobby cried. "Who?" "Where are you taking us?" Bobby asked. He stared out the car window at the thick woods. The trees shivered in a strong breeze. Fresh spring green leaves shimmered like bright emeralds. "A secret place," Samantha replied, not smiling, her eyes on the road. It was Saturday afternoon. Bobby had a date with Bree that night, but Samantha had called a little before noon and said she desperately had to talk to him. Bobby had picked her up in his red Bonneville a few blocks from her house on Fear Street. Samantha insisted he let her drive. She promised she would take it easy, so he climbed out and let her get behind the wheel. As soon as she pulled away from the curb, she opened all the windows and the moonroof. The warm wind blew through the car, making her black hair flutter behind her as she leaned over the steering wheel. She looked very spring-like, Bobby thought, in a white tank top and yellow and white striped shorts, but her mood wasn't as bright as her appearance. She had barely said a word as she guided the car out of town and into the woods. Bobby realized he had been quiet too, lost in his own troubled thoughts. He watched the trees whir by, feeling the warm sun on the back of his neck through the open moonroof. Suddenly, Samantha turned sharply onto a narrow dirt road. The car bumped along for several yards. Then she pulled to a stop under a canopy of overhanging trees. "Why'd we stop?" Bobby asked, his eyes slowly adjusting to the shade. "Where are we?" "We have to talk," Samantha replied, not answering his questions. She turned off the ignition and stared straight ahead. The breeze fluttered her hair. "Talk? About what?" "About the other night," she replied softly. "About how you mixed me up with Bree." "Hey, I'm sorry about that," Bobby said quickly. I asked you to break up with her," Samantha interrupted. "Remember? Weeks ago." "Yeah, I know," Bobby replied uncomfortably. "Well, now it's too late," Samantha said, still avoiding his eyes, still staring out to the woods. "Too late? What do you mean?" Bobby demanded. "It's gone too far," Samantha murmured. "I don't want to share you anymore. It's too hard on me, Bobby. It's too confusing. We're both too confused, you know?" "Well?" Bobby hesitated. He stared hard at Samantha, trying to guess what she was about to say. He always liked to stay at least one step ahead of the girls he was with. He didn't like feeling 10 steps behind as he did with Samantha and Bree. "We have to kill Bree," Samantha said casually. Bobby blinked. He knew he hadn't heard her correctly. "We have to kill her," Samantha repeated. "We really have to." Bobby laughed. "I don't get the joke, Samantha. You're about as funny as Arnie today." She grabbed his hand, her eyes fiery in the shadowy light. "No joke. For real," she murmured. She squeezed his hand in both of hers. "Let's kill Bree, Bobby. Let's really kill her. She's such a total pain. You know she is." Bobby gaped at her, startled by her growing enthusiasm. "We'll kill her, Bobby," Samantha continued. "Then it'll be just you and me. It'll be great. So great." Bobby stared intently into her eyes. "Is she serious? Is she teasing me? Is this a joke?" No joke, he realized. Samantha was serious. She meant it. She really wanted to kill her sister. She let go of his hand and grabbed his shoulders. "Okay," she demanded, pulling him close. She began smothering his face with rapid kisses. "Okay, Bobby, we'll kill her. Okay?" She kissed his forehead, his cheeks, his chin. "Okay, Bobby, can we kill her? Can we?" "Okay," Bobby replied. "Let's kill her." Chapter 21. Samantha smiled as she raised her hands to push back her hair. The strap on her shirt moved, and Bobby caught a glimpse of the tiny blue butterfly tattoo on her left shoulder. What is going on here? Bobby asked himself, gaping in shock at the tattoo. Samantha absently pulled the strap over it and settled back against the wheel. I knew you'd agree, Samantha whispered, the pleased smile still on her face. She started the car. Bobby stared at her. The tattoo, he murmured. You didn't have it when we drove around. You... She locked her eyes on his. What are you talking about? You know I have a tattoo. Then Bree was pretending to be you, Bobby told her. Bree must have found out about you and me. She took your place and... Bobby, you're not making any sense, Samantha said. You're getting all mixed up. All the more reason to kill Bree. She shifted the car and guided it onto the dirt road. I want to show you a special place, she said softly. She's totally crazy, he decided. Samantha is really nuts. Why didn't I realize it before? Why didn't I figure it out? She wants to kill her own sister, her own twin sister. I have got to do something. I agreed to help her. I just went along with her to get her quiet, just to make her shut up about killing Bree. She's crazy. Totally crazy. What should I do? He thought hard as the car bumped over the narrow dirt road, curving between trees, deeper and deeper into the woods until the sun was completely blocked out by the tunnel of trees. I have to warn Bree, Bobby decided. That's the first thing I'll do. As soon as I get back to town, I'll warn Bree, and then Bree can tell the parents or the police or whomever she wants. Samantha chuckled happily as the car hit a hard bump. She hummed to herself as she drove even deeper into the woods. Her whole mood changed when I agreed to help her kill Bree, Bobby realized, feeling his stomach knot up. She really is a sicko. He suddenly wondered if Samantha was the one who had been torturing him, cutting his tires, messing with his guitar, putting that disgusting monkey head in his locker. She's dangerous, he decided. Dangerous and crazy. He lurched forward as she braked the car to a sudden stop. Here we are. She flashed him a warm smile. Our own secret place. They climbed out of the car. The air smelled fresh and piney. Bobby stared up ahead at a small, shingled cabin nearly hidden by the trees. A wooden barrel stood against one cabin wall. A rusted barbecue grill lay on its side in the tall grass beside the barrel. Where are we? Bobby asked, hesitantly following Samantha toward the front door. This is my family's cabin, she told him. It's a wonderful little hideaway. She took his hand and pulled him toward the door. We'll bring Bree here. No one will find her for weeks. Bobby felt the knot in his stomach tighten. She has this all planned, he realized. This is so cold, so cold. She stepped in front of the door and smiled at him. It doesn't look like much from the outside, but it's real cozy inside. I'll show you. A hornet buzzed around Bobby's head. He ducked and tried to swat it away. Samantha laughed. You're not afraid of bugs, are you? Who, me? Of course not, Bobby replied. You'll have to force the door open, Samantha told him. I forgot my key. Bobby hesitated. Force it? Just lean on it real hard with your shoulder, she instructed. The lock is real flimsy. It should pop right open. She gave him a playful push up to the door. What am I doing here? Bobby asked himself. What am I doing here with this sicko? Go ahead, she urged sharply. He took a deep breath and obediently slammed his shoulder into the door. It bent but didn't give. It popped open on the second try. Bobby led the way into the tiny cabin. Sunlight filtered in through the windows, making the bare wood floorboards shimmer. Bobby saw an old vinyl couch, 2 canvas lawn chairs, a couple of plastic TV tables leaning in a corner. A framed, yellowed map filled with Indian names hung above the small stone fireplace. It's real rustic, Samantha said, moving close to him. But it's perfect. There's no one around for miles. That's why my dad had it built here. We don't start coming out here until July. Bobby sniffed the air. It's kind of musty, he muttered. It's been closed up all winter. But it's cozy, isn't it? Without waiting for a reply, she threw her arms around him and kissed him with real emotion. So, we'll do it? You and me, she whispered, nibbling his earlobe. We'll bring Bree here. We'll kill her. And then we'll be together forever and ever? Okay, Bobby replied again. I've got to get back and warn Bree, he thought. He started to tell Samantha he needed to get home, but she pressed herself against him again and smothered him with kisses. Bree, I have to see you, Bobby said urgently. He whispered, even though he was closed up in his bedroom. Now. But, Bobby, she protested, you're going to see me in a couple of hours, remember? You said we're going dancing. Bree, listen to me, Bobby pleaded. We have to talk, right away. Her voice registered surprise. What's so important? It can't wait a couple of hours. My family's eating dinner now, Bobby, and we have cousins visiting. Bree, please. I'm sorry. Just hold your breath till tonight, okay? I've got to go. See you at 8. The line went dead. Bobby turned off the cordless phone and tossed it onto the bed in frustration. I'm trying to save your life, you idiot, he cried out loud. He began pacing frantically back and forth, thinking hard. How was he going to explain this to Bree? He didn't want to reveal to her that he'd been going out with Samantha. That would only cause more trouble. But how could he just tell her that Samantha was planning to kill her? Why would Bree believe such a crazy story? Who would believe it? He paced back and forth in his room for a while. Then he threw himself onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, feverish thoughts spinning in his brain. His parents called him to dinner, but he shouted down that he wasn't hungry. Finally, it was time to drive to Fear Street and pick up Bree. She greeted him at the door, dressed for dancing in a silky green blouse and a short green skirt over black tights. Good night, everyone, she called into the living room. Bobby saw Samantha in the kitchen doorway. Have a good time, you two, she called cheerily. Bobby glumly led Bree to the car. Are we still going dancing? She asked. Bobby locked his eyes on hers. His expression remained solemn. Bree, I have to talk to you. I have something very serious to say. Bobby, this is so sudden. I'm too young to get married, she joked. She frowned when he didn't laugh. Wow, you are grim tonight. He backed down the driveway, headed the car down Fear Street for a few blocks, then pulled to a stop at the curb. Listen, he said, turning to her. I know this is going to sound crazy, but you've got to believe me. Bree glanced out the window. Why did you stop here, beside the cemetery? Just listen, Bobby said impatiently. He began the story he had rehearsed in his room. I was cruising around this afternoon, and happened to see Samantha. She waved to me, so I stopped the car. She climbed in and said she had to talk to me. Bree's eyes widened in surprise. Samantha wanted to talk to you. About what? That's what I'm going to tell you, Bobby replied breathlessly. She made me drive up to your family's cabin in the woods. Then she told me. Bobby hesitated. Would Bree believe him? Samantha told me she wanted to take you to the cabin and kill you. Bree's mouth dropped open in shock. I'm not making it up, Bobby stammered. I knew I had to warn you, Bree. Your own sister, your own twin sister. She wants to kill you. Bree stared back at him, her mouth still open. Her eyes gazed back at him blindly, and then he saw them narrow in understanding. Her features tightened. She nodded her head, as if deciding something for herself. I have a confession to make, Bobby, Bree whispered, avoiding his eyes. I just can't believe your twin sister wants to kill you, Bobby insisted. I have to tell you something, Bree whispered solemnly. You see, Samantha and I, we're not twins. Chapter 22. Bree leaned closer to him, her face nearly hidden in shadow. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap. Her voice trembled as she began to explain. There's a third sister, she revealed, watching his startled reaction. Samantha and I aren't twins. We're triplets. Wow, Bobby muttered, shaking his head. I mean, wow. Our third sister is named Jenny Lynn, Bree continued, staring out at the Fear Street Cemetery. You must have been with Jenny Lynn this afternoon, Bobby. Not Samantha. Samantha was home all day with me. Oh, man, I don't believe this, Bobby murmured. He knew how serious this was, but Bobby couldn't keep a thought from popping into his head. I've got to tell Arnie. Wait till he hears I've been out with triplets, not twins. Jenna Lynn is very dangerous, Bree continued, her eyes on the crooked gravestones beyond the cemetery fence. We never talk about her. She was sent to live with my aunt and uncle on the West Coast. Why? Bobby asked, sliding his hands around the steering wheel. What did she do? She was always terribly jealous of Samantha and me, Bree revealed. Anything we had, she had to have, or destroy. Jenny Lynn just couldn't accept the idea that there were three of us and we had to share. Bree sighed. My parents got her therapy and everything, but it didn't help. Then, when we were 13, she went over the edge. She stopped. Bobby saw that she was breathing hard. She chewed her lower lip. He could see this was really hard for her to talk about. What happened? He asked softly. Bree took a deep breath and continued. Jenny Lynn locked Samantha and me in our room. Then she started a fire downstairs. Oh no, Bobby cried sincerely. Luckily, my dad got home before we were harmed, but afterward, my family knew that something serious had to be done about Jenny Lynn. She was sent to a hospital for over a year. When she got out, her doctors felt it would be safer for us if she didn't live with us. So they sent her out west? Bobby asked, running his hand up and down Bree's trembling arm. She nodded. Jenny Lynn has been with my father's sister and husband ever since. She raised her eyes to Bobby. Please don't tell anyone, she pleaded. We've moved twice since then. One of the reasons we moved to Shadyside was so the family could have a new start. I won't. Promise, Bobby said softly, still rubbing her arm. I can't believe my aunt and uncle haven't called, Bree said. They probably don't realize that Jenny Lynn has come back here. I'm going to tell my parents right away. I don't know what they'll want to do about it, but I'm also worried about you. She's so dangerous. I'll be careful, Bobby told her. If you see her again, call the police, Bree urged. Really, Bobby, call the police right away. Bobby remained silent for a long while, thinking hard. Do you think it could have been Jenny Lynn who has been doing all those gross things to me? He asked. Bree nodded grimly. Yes, it probably was her. But why? Bobby demanded. She doesn't even know me. She wants to destroy whatever Samantha or I have, Bree answered with a shudder. She'll do anything to ruin our lives. Bobby felt a tremor of fear run down his back. He suddenly felt chill despite the warmth of the night. I can't believe I was with Jenny Lynn this afternoon, he stammered. I really thought it was Samantha. Bree gazed at him thoughtfully. A low howl floated up from somewhere in the cemetery. They both heard it. Just a cat, I think, Bobby murmured. I'll show you how to tell Jenny Lynn from me and Samantha, Bree said quietly. How? Bobby asked eagerly. Bree pulled down the collar of her blouse. This is how you can tell it's Jenny Lynn, she instructed. She pointed to a spot on her left shoulder. Jenny Lynn has a tiny blue tattoo of a butterfly right here. Chapter 23. Bobby had promised Bree he wouldn't tell anyone about Jenny Lynn, but he didn't care. He had to tell Arnie. My fingers were crossed when I promised, he told himself. He dropped Bree off at her house. Neither of them felt like going dancing, and Bree said she was too shaken about the news of her sister's return to do anything else. He pulled his car up her driveway. She leaned across the seat and snuggled up against him. I'm sorry about Jenny Lynn, she whispered. She ran her lips over his cheek. You like me, don't you, Bobby? She whispered. You really like me, don't you? She's getting to be a pain, Bobby decided. She was really pretty, and he liked making out with her, but she was just too needy, and he really didn't want to deal with all this sobby drama. Why couldn't they keep their problems in the family? Yeah, I'm nuts about you, he whispered. As they kissed goodnight, he thought about what Arnie would say when he told him about the third sister. He drove straight to Arnie's house. He found Arnie and Melanie standing in the driveway, about to climb into Arnie's little Chevy Geo. Bobby pulled up behind them, blocking the driveway. Hey, what's up? Arnie called, grinning at him. Melanie scowled. It was obvious she wasn't glad to see him. We're going to the late show at the Tenplex, Arnie volunteered. Want to come? Melanie flashed Arnie a dirty look. She turned to Bobby. What are you doing here? You run out of twins? Bobby laughed. Funny you should mention that. I just came over to tell Arnie some news, but I'm glad you're here, Melanie. She rolled her eyes. Thanks a bunch. You've known the Wade twins forever, right? Bobby asked her. Melanie nodded. I told you that, since we were kids. But you didn't tell me there were 3 sisters, Bobby said, studying her expression. Whoa, Arnie cried. 3 of them? Did you go out with a third one too, Bobby? That's got to be some kind of record. He slapped Bobby a high five. But Bobby kept his eyes on Melanie, who still hadn't reacted to the news in any way. Well, Mel, Bobby asked, is it true? Are they really triplets? Don't call me Mel, Melanie snapped. You know I hate that. Answer the question, Bobby insisted. Melanie hesitated. I can't say, Bobby. Bobby's smile faded. What's that supposed to mean? It means I can't say, Melanie repeated coldly. Who told you there was another sister? Bree did. Just now, Bobby told her, his eyes trained on hers. So is it true? I can't say, Melanie repeated sharply. How many times do I have to repeat it? Why can't you say? Bobby demanded. Melanie hesitated. Because I promised, she said softly. So it is true, Bobby cried. You promised Bree and Samantha you wouldn't tell anyone about Jenny Lynn, right? Right? Maybe, Melanie said. Then she quickly added, I mean, maybe yes, maybe no. I made a promise, Bobby, so don't ask me anything more. She gave Arnie a shove. Come on, we're going to be late. Arnie grinned at Bobby. Triplets! Wow! He turned to Melanie. How come it's such a big deal secret? It's a long story, Melanie told him with a sigh. She frowned at Bobby. Bye, Bobby. It's been great. Bobby felt too pumped to go home. He cruised around town, the radio on low, thinking about the Wades. I'm going to dump them both, he decided. Time to move on to some fresh faces. Why should I deprive all the other girls of Bobby the man? But then he thought, Maybe I'll drop Bree and keep seeing Samantha. Samantha is exciting, and she loves to make out. It would be hard to give up those long, passionate kisses, he thought. The blood-covered monkey head floated into his thoughts. He remembered the slashed tires, the shock on the auditorium stage. No, the Wades are too much trouble, he decided. I never bargained for a psycho third sister. Jenny Lynn plays too rough. I've got to get out of this before Jenny Lynn does something else. I could get killed. I'll dump them both tomorrow. Easy come, easy go, he told himself. But as he pulled up his drive a little before 12, Bobby realized he was totally confused. He didn't know what he wanted to do about the Wades. Too foxy to drop, too dangerous to keep, he muttered to himself as he let himself in the front door. He decided maybe he'd play along for a little while. The next afternoon, an overcast Sunday with dark storm clouds rolling across the sky, Bobby met Samantha in the parking lot of the mall. She wore a navy blue short-sleeved pullover and baggy faded jeans. She had a black sox baseball cap pulled on over her hair. "What happened last night?" Samantha demanded immediately without any greeting. "You brought Bree home so early, and she ran up to her room very upset. Did you break up with her?" Bobby shook his head. Samantha frowned in disappointment. "Well then, what happened?" She told me about Jenny Lynn," Bobby replied softly. "Huh?" Samantha's mouth dropped open. She narrowed her eyes at Bobby beneath the cap. "She told me your other sister must be back," Bobby revealed. "You know, Jenny Lynn." Samantha's face paled. The light seemed to fade from her eyes. "Oh, no," she moaned. She shook her head. "Poor Bree. Poor Bree must be in bad shape again." Bobby swallowed hard. "Huh? What do you mean?" Samantha grabbed Bobby's arm as if for support and leaned against his ear. "There is no Jenny Lynn, Bobby," she whispered. "We don't have a third sister." Chapter 24. "Take me home, right now," Samantha demanded, her eyes burning into Bobby's. "I've got to tell Mom and Dad. We've got to deal with Bree." "But I don't understand," Bobby replied. "What are you saying?" Samantha uttered an unhappy sigh. "Bree hasn't done this in years, Bobby. When she was troubled, she used to make up these stories about Jenny Lynn, about our having a third sister. She would make up frightening stories about Jenny Lynn, horrible fantasies about this imaginary evil sister." "Fantasies? They were all fantasies?" Bobby stared at her dumbfounded. Samantha nodded grimly. "That's how we could tell when Bree was in trouble," she said softly. "Whenever she started talking about Jenny Lynn, we knew that Bree was about to go over the edge." Bobby swallowed hard and shook his head. "Wow," he muttered. Wow. "Drive me home, Bobby," Samantha insisted. "I'm really worried about Bree. Why do you think she told you those lies? Do you think she found out about you and me, and it messed up her mind?" "I can't believe that Jenny Lynn's story isn't true," Bobby said. "The way she told it, she made it so real. I... His voice trailed off. "Bobby, why are you staring at me like that?" Samantha asked. "I just had a thought," Bobby told her. He reached for the collar of her pullover shirt. Startled, she backed away. "Hey, would you do me a favor, Samantha? Would you let me see your shoulder?" he asked. "My shoulder?" She laughed. "What's your problem, Bobby?" Her hand went up to the neck of the navy blue shirt. "Come on, Samantha. Let me see your left shoulder for a second." She hesitated, then shrugged. "You're getting weird, Bobby." She pulled on her shirt collar, revealing her bare shoulder. No tattoo. "Where's your tattoo, Samantha?" Bobby demanded, narrowing his eyes at her. She pulled the collar back into place. "Tattoo? Get serious. You know I don't have a tattoo." Bobby stared at her. "What about that afternoon in the science lab? Remember? You showed me the butterfly tattoo. You said it was the way to tell you from Bree." Her mouth dropped open. She pressed the palm of one hand against his forehead. "Do you have a fever? Are you delirious? I never showed you any tattoo in the science lab." "Then who was it?" Bobby demanded shrilly. "Are you losing it too?" Samantha asked, her expression turning to concern. "Come on, Bobby. Get a grip. I've got to get home and deal with Bree. Don't you start imagining things too." Later that night, Bobby sat at his desk, staring at the pale blue wall, listening to the rain patter against the bedroom window. He couldn't concentrate on his homework. "It's lucky there's no school tomorrow," he thought, staring at the blank sheet of paper in front of him. The high school was closed because of a teacher's meeting. Maybe I'll be able to think clearly tomorrow. Maybe I'll be able to write my book report then. Or will I ever be able to think clearly again, he wondered. He kept picturing Samantha in a dimly lit science lab, the devilish grin on her face as she showed him the tiny tattoo. And he kept picturing Bree's troubled expression, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap as she sat beside him in the car and told him about their third sister, Jenny Lynn. One of them is messing with my mind, Bobby thought bitterly. One of them is a total liar. But which one? Did Bree make up Jenny Lynn? Is the third sister just Bree's fantasy? Or was Samantha trying to cover up her family's dark secret? Was Samantha lying? Or was Bree? The rain pounded against the window pane now. Lightning flashed. As Bobby waited for the boom of thunder, the phone rang. "Whoa!" he cried out, startled, his voice drowned out by the thunder's roar. He picked up the cordless phone and pushed the talk button. "Hello?" The girl's voice on the other end was harsh and impatient. "Bobby, this is Jenny Lynn." "Huh?" "I saw you in the mall parking lot with Bree this afternoon, Bobby." "No way," Bobby protested, his heart pounding. "That wasn't Bree. It was Samantha." "I know my own sister," the voice snapped angrily. "It was Bree." How could it have been Bree? Bobby wondered, thinking hard. It had to be Samantha. And who is this? Is it really Jenny Lynn? Did Samantha lie to me this afternoon? Why did she tell me there is no third sister? This girl's voice is different, harsher, much deeper. Jenny Lynn certainly sounds real to me. "When are we going to kill her, Bobby?" the voice demanded. You promised we kill her. When?" "Whoa, hold on a minute," Bobby pleaded. "It's got to be soon, Bobby," she said menacingly. "Very soon. You're starting to make me angry. You're starting to make me very angry."